If most people agree that 90% of their sport or their performance domain is mental, why do so few people systematically train their minds?
That is the question that we are here to answer. Welcome back to the Northstar Method podcast. Of course, you can't be back because this is the first episode, and we are very glad that you're here to join us for it. On this podcast, we're going to dive deep into the psychology of performance, how the best of the best use it to be at their best when it matters most, and how you can use it in your day-to-day life. My name is Sebastian. I am the co-founder and CEO of Northstar Performance Psychology.
And my name is Sean. I'm the co-founder and director of mental performance.
In today's episode, we are going to get into why we started this company, what we want to do in the future, and how you can be a part of it through questions sent in to us by current clients. But the hope is that going forward, the audience will send us questions to answer too. So if anything comes to mind in the meantime, you can message us at Northstar Method on Instagram or email it in at go@northstarmethod.com. All right, without further ado, let's get into the questions. Our first question comes to us from a former client who is throwing us a softball here. It is, why did you start this company? When you think of the word psychology, what comes to mind? For most people, it's images of therapy, laying on a leather couch, telling a bearded man in a suit all of your deepest, darkest secrets. But the truth is there is so much more to this science than just fixing what goes wrong. It can also help more things go right too. And that's what we focus on when we're working with our athletes, artists, and performers in general. This is a proactive application of this science. We see this as a potential to start a movement. We are sick and tired of the idea that therapy and psychology is something that you do because something's wrong or because you're soft. The truth is, the way that we've branded this science has deflected a huge audience of people who could benefit from it away from it. We believe that psychology is useful for so much more than just mental health. Mental performance is a whole other side of the coin. And that's why our vision is to make training the mind as commonplace as training the body.
I would say it also helps that you and I both have some real-world experience applying some of these psychological skills and tools.
Yeah, no question that I think a lot of people, have went and got their master's or their doctorate in psychology, and that's great. But at the end of the day, the thing that makes the experience and the training more valuable is that you've applied it for yourself. And so that being said, how have you noticed psychology and mental performance impact you in your personal life?
How long we got? My journey in performance psychology started when I was 17, actually, and not in the way that most people get here, frankly. You often hear, former athlete, I struggled with XYZ. I am a former athlete, and I did struggle with XYZ, but I was never thinking about going into sports psychology for that reason. How I got there was on the night of August 13th, 2015, the night that changed my life forever. Some friends and I down in South Florida, where I was born and raised and went to high school and college, we decided to go on a nighttime boat cruise, which is a pretty, routine thing to do down there. We were cruising around as far as I can remember, and I don't actually remember any of this part, but we ended up hitting a bridge at high speed, and we were involved in a pretty serious accident in which I sustained a C5 spinal cord injury and was left paralyzed from the neck down. And I actually wasn't even the worst one off. My friend John, who's no longer with us, rest in peace, he passed away that night, and then I have other friends who sustained some injuries as well. Shout out Emily, Chris, Kevin, and George. And I was 17 years old, sitting in a hospital bed, unable to move anything under my neck, and it was definitely a pretty dark time. But the naivety I had at 17 actually kind of played a role into how much I just kind of dove into the recovery. I kind of looked at it like an ACL. I was like, okay, I'm going to get in here, do my PT, and after that's over, I should be good to go. I should be able to go do my senior year at high school and be hunky-dory. When I found out, unfortunately, that was not going to be the case, I knew I had to take this recovery into my own hands. And so that set off on a whole other journey where I was in 8 hours plus of PT, OT, pool therapy, acupuncture, whatever I could do to regain as much neurological function as humanly possible, and eventually walk again. Besides the physical gains that I have got from this journey, spending so many hours, so many days in therapies, maybe even a more profound realization that I've had is the relationship between the mental side and your performance. In my case, my progress and my injury recovery. I noticed, and as you can imagine, there's a lot of ups and downs on this journey, a lot of downs, certainly. And when I was really, really rooted in the downs and focused on the worst, my progress stagnated. And when I was in a good headspace, good mental state, I flourished, I thrived. The realization there kind of led me to want to notice this in other people, whether it was people recovering from similar injuries or just day-to-day life, or athletes, because a lot of the gyms that I was working at, I had a lot of pro athletes, and I noticed the same phenomenon in there. So I noticed this was no fluke. The mindset has a lot to do with the performance, and so from there I switched my major to psychology, graduated with a bachelor's degree in psychology, and from there I actually made the decision to move across the country and attend the University of Denver to get a master's degree in sport and performance psychology, which is actually where we met.
And before we get into that, I guess I just want to ask you, what went into the decision? Like, you're thinking to yourself, I've just gone through something where I'm talking to doctors, I'm talking to people who are some of the best in the world at what they do, and they're telling me there's a limit to your progress. This is what we see happen with most people who've had your experience. Mm-hmm. How did you sort of say to yourself, okay, yes, that's the limit, or no, I reject that and I think more can be done? I guess, how did that go into your decision to study psychology further and take a huge leap moving across the country when obviously everybody and everything that went into recovering and living day-to-day life was back home?
Yeah, good question. As I kind of touched on before, my naive hard-headedness kind of helped me out a little. I thought I was always right, and that's not a great trait, but it actually helped me out a little bit here. And when the doctors were telling me I was never going to walk again, or further that I might not use my triceps again, I just thought there's no fucking way. That's not, that might be the case, but I've heard miracle stories, I've heard that people break out of this. I've talked to them. And I just always assumed that I was going to be one of those stories. I was going to be the one who breaks out of this. And so from there, I just took it into my own hands. I never really believed that a research study was going to tell me how far I would go. And so from there, I just kind of believed in myself. And I shouldn't just say it was all me. I had a fantastic support system, which is really important. Best family ever, best community I could have asked for. That really helped, but I always had the belief that I was going to really define what happened to me. So
I'm hearing a few different factors. One, healthy anger. And Dr. Gabor Mate, who has done a lot of research on the physical manifestations of trauma, has talked about stories of spontaneous healing. These are situations where people are terminally ill. They've been told that they are certainly going to die. There's an expiration date on their life. And some of them just get better. Whether they had chemo or not, whether they had any traditional treatment or not, there is a subgroup of people who are terminally ill who just get better. And when they looked into the common themes between the people who got better, what they found was that these were people who reclaimed their sense of agency. So from a psychological standpoint, agency is this feeling of control. And it's not blown out of proportion. It's not that you can control things that are not controllable. It's just that what is in your control, you're going to exert full force over it. That's the one thing that they had in common. And I think behind that is this like idea that, you know what, fuck this. Like, I'm going to be the exception. There's this, like you said, like almost naive belief that, that you're not going to be subject to the trends of the average. And while there is some naivety to it, it's also something that you have to put effort into. And so how we would look at it now is like it very much is a skill. Belief, agency, these are things that you can train. And it sounds like through your experience, you had this like hands-on crash course in how to have crash agency. No, yeah, no. Exactly. And then I also hear this other perspective, which is I can learn something from this. I think the choice to go and study the impact of the mind on performance further sort of like reinforces that belief that I have control over more of this than even the best doctors in the world would say.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. Like I forget exactly what you said, but full force towards the controllables has really been like a cornerstone of this mindset, for sure. And then another like psychological tool or skill that's easy to use, or not easy to use, that I have used is what we call cognitive reframing. And this is really just challenging the negative voice that's kind of automatic in your head. So for example, in my situation, like, dude, why are you working your ass off every single day for a result that's unattainable, like for 99.9% of people? And my challenge to that might be, you didn't say 100. Like, you know, okay, so you just said that there's a slight possibility. Working out and going to physical therapy and trying to physically recover is at the very least going to make me healthy. I'm going to get exercise and movement. And it will get me further in the direction towards the goal that I want to reach. So, I mean, I don't know. You could try to argue that if you'd like.
Yeah. So, to this point, right, 2025, would you say that compared to the prognosis that you were given, like relative to that, are you under, at, or have surpassed it?
Yeah, surpassed. I mean, my prognosis was maybe triceps. And I mean, you can't really see, I guess, here, but I've got some function in every muscle. And I live a fully independent life, and that was always out of the question. And we can talk further about that on another episode, but certainly blown past my prognosis. If you do like a quick Google search on like a C5 quadriplegic, and you think about quality of life, like it says like dependency for assisted or activities of daily living. So surpassed that. I can use my triceps. I can even stand on both legs now for like 10 minutes. So certainly blew past that. Not to brag. But.
Yeah, well, so is it a fair statement that leaning into the psychological skills of agency, of belief, of motivation, healthy anger, these things were key factors in surpassing expectations for one of, if not the most severe kind of injury that a person can have?
I mean, I would say that's a very fair summation.
Yeah, so it tracks that with that experience that you would decide to move across the country to invest further in learning about these skills and how we can leverage the science of psychology to surpass expectations, to fulfill our potential. And as you had mentioned before, that is where we met. And so I recall taking a gap year after undergrad to figure out what I wanted to do and going on LinkedIn and noticing that there was one person at the program that I wanted to go to, the University of Denver's Masters of Arts in Sport and Performance Psychology program. There was a guy there who had gone to FAU, my same undergrad school. And I sent him a DM and I said, look, man, I'm interested in going to this program. I think it's the best in the country for this topic. Would you like read my essay and and help me get it? And you know, I mean, at that time we were strangers, but I didn't realize like that I had a good chance at getting in. I honestly thought like my grades were not good enough. I hadn't done any research. I hadn't done anything in undergrad that would like really help me get into this program. And so I reached out looking for some guidance, and it really seems like looking back now, there was some bigger force at play in terms of connecting us in that way. But I remember you reading over my essay, and I remember you clearly saying, dude, this thing's better than mine. So
it was. I literally believe that.
Yeah, long story short, I did get in. And when I got to the program, you know, I was super ambitious, super driven. I wanted to do anything I could to like be the best at this. And I remember a lot of opportunities for field placements, which are basically like internships within a master's degree, not working out, falling short. So I'll never forget the day that you called me and said, look, dude, I think I have an opportunity. We can, instead of taking advantage of the field placements that they already have, which some of them are quality, some of them are not, we can build our own one.
Yeah, and I'm really glad you said yes, because you didn't at first, if you remember.
Really?
Because, well, there was like a conflict with another potential field placement that I'm not going to name, but then that fell through. Do you recall that?
I do, yeah, yes.
Somebody may have dropped the ball.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah,
that's
okay.
Right. So we almost didn't work together, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, but then that fell through, and so you sent me the text, and you're like, hey, I'm open, let's do it. We met for dinner at Breck,
yep.
and picked each other's minds. I think we both found it was a good fit. And so together at Barwis Performance Center in Colorado, shout out Barwis, Colorado, and Barwis Methods, we were able to create a sort of mental skills workshop for the athletes there. And at that point, it was, at the end, it was all just MMA fighters, pro, amateur, whatever, but really just whatever athletes wanted to come. And this is where we started our work together, where we learned, we had our downs, we had our ups, but really just developed this vision. And I think you've been really key in the clarity here of the vision, but just knowing we kind of both had the same idea of what psychology could be used for, and how it's further than, like you said, scoring more touchdowns or hitting the bottom line at a higher number or whatever the hell it is. But just really for enhanced living.
Yeah. The mental performance group that we started every single week at Barwis Performance Center here in Inglewood, Colorado, that gave us the opportunity to try things in a way that, frankly, I don't think the way that everybody else in the program was thinking about it would allow. And it was this really ambitious idea of training the mind should be commonplace as training the body is. It was this proactive approach that we got people really excited about. I remember the first couple times that we did the groups, it was like 3 high school kids. And after those sessions, we'd sit there and try to break it down, and I'd be like, dude, this is not going well. Like, nobody's here. Nobody wants to do this. Maybe our sort of different way of doing this isn't right. But we had that tenacity to stick with it. And within 6 months, we went from 3 people to 20, 25, 30 people filling up the room, and we didn't even have enough chairs. So that was our lab. And that's where we realized that we had a different way to do this than everybody else. Now, there's a lot of smart people out there. There's a lot of people doing good work. But I have this core belief that the work that we do here is really exciting. It's something that people should get fired up about. And there are meditation apps out there, and there are a million people talking about mindset. What we do differently is we turn this into sets and reps. So just the same way that you have bench press and squat and deadlift, we have exercises for the mind that you can do on a routine basis and that you can track your progress on. This is not abstract. This is not something that you can't see or feel. It's very tangible, and it matters beyond just your performance on the field. The skills that we try to work on with our clients are skills that not only help them stay calm under pressure when it's 2-minute drill in the fourth quarter and they got to go down and tie the game. Those same skills transfer over to hard conversations where maybe somebody in your life is upset with you and you have to go into a hard conversation and hear them out, and it's make or break for that relationship. Maybe it's job interviews where you're reaching for something that is a little bit above your pay grade, but being able to stay in the state that you want to be in that situation is make or break in whether or not you convince the person to give you that promotion or that position. These same skills are the difference between having the confidence to walk up to the person at the bar that you want to ask out or just staying home and fantasizing about it. And so that experience kind of allowed us to sharpen the method that we work by, hence the name the Northstar method. Our work is not some scattered random idea of psychology. It is a very structured process that we know when you follow, you get certain results. And this is something that I had the opportunity to preview in my life. We talk a lot about this idea of how you got to retroactively examine the impacts of mental skills on your day-to-day life. I got an opportunity to do it proactively. And so, and I commend you for the courage and how you talk about your experience, because I mean, maybe like on one hand you've gotten pretty used to it.
I've got some reps, brother. This.
And this is apples to oranges, but my personal experience with how performance psychology has impacted my day-to-day life and my health is something that I haven't talked a lot about, frankly, for fear of like how politicized it's become. So we all went through it, the pandemic. We all got COVID for the most part at one point or another. For some people, it was a cold. For other people, they lost loved ones. I got COVID early in 2020, and for whatever reason, it hit me hard. I went to the hospital. I had complications cardiovascularly, and either way, after a few days, had some medicine, brought the inflammation down, got over it. I thought that was it. Like, I thought, whatever, I'm young, I'm healthy, nothing else is going to happen. From that point on, for the next 3, 4, 5 years, I would experience a bunch of what seemed to be like random symptoms that at first were like unrelated to COVID until enough science came out to talk about this idea of long COVID. And long story short, it's like a post-viral autoimmune disorder. It's something where your body is kind of like freaking out, attacking itself as a result of this virus. Halfway through grad school, after we had done our stint at Barwis, I got sick again. I think it was probably COVID again, and this time it just like sidelined me completely. I got to the point with the fatigue and with the symptoms where I was unable to do day-to-day life, where
You said you couldn't get out of bed.
Literally eating any food caused this like autoimmune reaction where it thought that even like walnuts were like a foreign invader. And so you would get basically like allergy symptoms. So it was like your throat's closing, your eyes are swelling up, you can't breathe from just eating like normal food. So I spent almost a year and a half laying in like a dark room in bed, paying ridiculous amounts of money, going to doctors who were doing research, who were trialing different drugs, trying to find answers, and nothing was working. After, I believe, 14 months of this struggle where I hadn't worked, I hadn't gone to hang out with friends, I hadn't barely even left my room. At this point, I'm fucking 24 years old and my parents are like taking care of me. I went to...
Welcome to the club, yeah.
Just like, I talk about agency, like you...
That's why autonomy is one of my biggest values, dude.
And that our experiences that shape our core values, and
that's a conversation for another happy.
Yeah, exactly. I went to a clinic at I won't even name the school in South Florida, where a world-renowned doctor who was supposed to know everything there was to know about this charged me out the ass for tests, looked me in the eye and said, you can expect to get a little better than you are right now, but with these results, you're never going to feel good again.
Damn. I don't even remember this part of
this. This is a doctor who is getting ridiculous amounts of money for research, who is thought of as an expert in neuroimmunology, so the relationship between the nervous system and the immune system. And I remember at that moment doing that meeting from my laptop because I'm in bed, shutting the laptop and feeling the angriest I've ever felt in my fucking life. Like, how did I just spend my last dollars? I haven't worked in over a year. I have nothing left. And this person that I've put all my trust into is basically saying, forget about it.
You're fucked. Yeah.
That's when I took it into my own hands. And I think that's the moment that you have where you get so fed up with what people are telling you is possible that you entirely reject it, whether it's based in fact or not, whether you're right or not. You just decide, I will not be what you say I am.
At some point, there's just, what's the point of not? And I'll say this to certain athletes if they can handle it.
Okay.
And I'll shout out my mom, who I've been kind of giving advice to for her tennis performance. And
what, are we charging for that, or?
She's got the family discount. We did a test invoice. It's all good. But we got $1 from her. But she's telling me like how she's all in her head, like when she's going to serve, when it's match point, etc. And one of the things that I've used to encourage her to like flip the mindset is, you're not happy with the results right now. Why not just do a completely fucking different approach and see if the results are better? Like, what do you have to lose? And I know it's almost like radically practical or radically pragmatic, but it kind of, at some point, it helps and it flips the switch. It's like, all right, fuck it. If I don't take it into my own hands, I'm going to wither away and atrophy and die at 40 because the life expectancy of a quadriplegic is not high. For you, you're like, I'm not going to feel better ever unless I spend thousands of dollars a month for doctors that tell me that I'm fucked. And so why not take it into your own hands at that point?
Yeah, I think the core of what you're saying is this idea of when you go through stuff, whether that is a major adversity in your life or in your health, or whether that's just getting benched in sports, or not getting the promotion you were going for, or getting rejected by the person you ask out. These are experiences that make you feel disempowered. These are experiences that cause thoughts and feelings that say, I'm not enough, and I could never be enough. And those thoughts and feelings put you in a physical state that corresponds with that sort of fight or flight side of your nervous system. So people think of psychology as like thoughts and beliefs, and it's a lot more than that. There is a physiology and a biology to this, and it has a lot to do, if not everything to do, with what part of your nervous system you're in. And so when you are in fight or flight, when you are in that survival mode part of your nervous system, it is only focused on getting to the next moment. It doesn't care about optimizing for the future. It certainly doesn't care about healing, because it just wants to get to the next moment. And so when you experience something that threatens your survival, you can easily get locked into that fight or flight and that survival mode, and that prevents your body from doing what it knows how to do, which is heal and grow and develop.
The body and the mind are both like wildly resilient if they're in the state that they're supposed to be in, right? So like what I've learned in this work is self-regulation almost comes first in a lot of situations.
Yeah.
And when you're in a regulated state, a lot of the issues that you're facing kind of fall into place a little bit easier. And And so it just kind of goes to what you said about like what state you're in, whether it's a survival kind of fight or flight, I need to get to the next moment so I stay alive, or if your state is more regulated, you're not in a state of survival, then you're better able to see the future and see the bigger picture, the vision, and eventually hopefully reach self-actualization.
Yeah, psychology, your thoughts have a cascading effect, and your cells can hear what you're thinking. Now, that's not to say like never think a negative thought, but over time, your body can feel how you are thinking about your situation. And so sometimes when you want to change your situation, healthy anger is the beginning. Being able to say, fuck this, like this is not going to be my reality, is the beginning. And to shore up my story, because obviously I'm here today essentially back to a normal life. I still have stuff I have to be careful about, but realistically living a normal life. The switch that flipped, yes, there are pharmaceutical interventions that are helpful. There are always going to be things, supplements, medicines, therapies that are going to be helpful for your situation, health or performance. But the primary driver of my healing was being able to regulate my state, being able to be in a state where you believe it's going to be okay. And that's really hard to believe after whatever's happened to you.
After a neurosurgeon and every single medical professional is telling you the opposite of what you want to believe.
Yeah.
That's when your back is against the wall. That's when you're down 28-3 at halftime of the Super Bowl, and you're like, fuck, what do I do here? Do you take the Tom Brady approach and think, okay, we need to score on 5 possessions, we're going to get 5 possessions? Or do you take the maybe practice squad Patriot player approach to where you're like, yo, dude, we're not surpassing this?
Yeah, like, let's just get out of here today.
Yeah, let's get out of here, exactly.
The common theme is the interaction between the external world and the internal environment. And so I think one of the best ways to sum up the work that we do is how you order your consciousness. So most people go outside in. Most people are looking to the external world to inform their internal state. If you make a certain face at me, I know that you don't like me. I feel bad about myself, right? If I look at the scoreboard and I'm down an unprecedented amount in the biggest game in the world, I think that's probably not possible. We reverse the order. So my internal state dictates the external one. I believe that no matter what happens, I can figure it out. So when I look at the scoreboard and I see 28-3, that's a fun challenge. I believe that no matter what happens to me, I have the skills to survive another day and to get better in the long run. So when the doctor tells me that what I want is not possible, I know that they just haven't seen it happen yet.
That's similar to what we were talking about off camera, is like these virtues, right? Like the virtues, the characteristics that we want to embody at our best. And like for me, I have them written out right here. It's resilient, confident, composed, and psychologically flexible. And it's really cool to go through life believing that I'm a resilient person. Whatever challenge that I face, I have the resilience to actually overcome it. And I do. And it also helps that I don't genuinely believe I'll go through anything harder than what I've already been through. I think that God and I have kind of come to terms on that one. And but anyway, every challenge I face, I'm like, hey, I have overcome harder. I'm a resilient person. I'm a confident person. I can stay composed in these situations when it matters most. Excuse me. And kind of knowing how you want to show up, and this is again indicative to that inside-out approach. It's like, I want to show up as a confident, composed, resilient person. That's the ideal. Where am I at now? And where is the gap, and what kind of mental skills do I need to practice to bridge that gap?
So, as you can clearly see, we have had personal experiences that have illuminated the power of performance psychology and how that can impact you, not just in your performance, but in your day-to-day life. That is why we started this company. Yes, you can score more points. Yes, you can make more money. Yes, you can have the performance of your life, and that is important. But that is a downstream byproduct of mental skills that make your day-to-day life better. And so we have devised and are constantly working on a method, a collection of both big picture and immediate exercises and skills that people can build to be at their best in the moments that it matters most. And our vision for this company is to show the world that the same way that they stretch and do yoga, go for a run or go for a lift, they can also train mental skills to be more psychologically fit, so that no matter what happens in their life, they can make the most of it. And we have some big ideas for how we want to show the world that is true, and how we want to help them believe that they can do it. And this podcast is the start of it. So we thank you for being here and for listening to the story. And if this is compelling at all to you, follow along. Whether it's the podcast, whether it's Northstar Method on Instagram, we want you step by step with us, helping us perfect this method and making it something that literally everyone on earth can use.
Like you said earlier, it's more than a company, it's a movement. Like, this is like a way of life, frankly. And the movement needs a community. And we want everybody who's interested in living at their best and thinking, feeling, doing their best as consistently as possible, we want you in the community.
So what is the Northstar Method? It's essentially a collection of mental skills and exercises to train those skills. Some of them are big picture, like helping you understand why you're doing what you're doing, what really matters to you, so that you can make hard decisions based on that sort of compass. And some of them are short-term, immediate exercises, visualization, meditation, breathing, things that can help you change your state right now. That sort of describes the overarching philosophy behind the Northstar Method, which is broken up into two halves: self-awareness and self-regulation. What we want to help people do is get to know who they are and what their responses are, have a much more granular and specific understanding of their thoughts, feelings, and actions, and then earn the ability to influence them. We believe that most of the time that you see somebody choke and miss a game-winning field goal, most of the time that you see somebody walk up to give a public speech and fumble over their words or screw up in an important conversation or an interview, this is a failure to understand how their thoughts and feelings are impacting their situation and an inability to influence them in the direction that they want to. You are sort of like a radio. You have all of these different frequencies that you can be tuned into. And for most people, they are completely random. They wake up, they see something that disappoints them, and now they are in survival mode or a negative state. They're worrying, they're falling victim to cognitive distortions, and this is a mode that they stay in for days, weeks, even months without realizing that that's where they're at. Self-awareness is the ability to notice where you're at. Self-regulation is the ability to influence it, and that is the point of the method. So what we want to do today is answer a couple of questions. These ones, again, sent in to us by clients and people in our community, and talk about some of those skills that are part of the method and how they could influence your performance in your day-to-day life in the future. If any of this interests you and you have questions as it relates to this topic, go ahead and send them in at Northstar Method on Instagram or go@northstarmethod.com in email.
So this one comes to us from a swimmer down at a high school in South Florida. And she writes, is visualization actually worth the hype, or is it all fluffy bullshit?
All right, so what is visualization?
I mean, literally, it's creating images in your mind for the ideal outcome of what you want to happen. And that's very kind of narrow. There's a lot of reasons to use visualization. There's both to kind of see the ideal performance, we call this action planning a lot of times, seeing that ideal performance, seeing yourself score the touchdown, hit the game-winning three, whatever. There's also what we can call like coping planning or mental game planning for when shit hits the fan. So what are some regular challenges that we might face, whether it's a mistake or performance anxiety or something that the opponent does? what is our response? We want to visualize that happening and seeing ourselves respond in the best way possible. Visualization also enhances motivation, confidence, composure, can be used for a lot of things. High school swimmer from South Florida, what I will say is that it certainly is worth the hype. There's a lot of good science as to why visualization works, and I'll quickly just discuss one study that was really interesting to me. I believe this was out of the University of Chicago, but they tested the effects of visualization on free throw shooters. So, yeah, it was free throw shooters, right? Yeah. And so they took two groups, right? They took a physical group and a mental group, we'll call them. The physical group was to practice shooting free throws for an hour a day for a month. And at the beginning of the month, they tested their percentage, shot X amount of free throws, got the percentage, and at the end of the month, they were also to test that percentage again. So physical group was shooting physical shots for an hour a day. The mental group was shooting visualized mental shots every day. So visualizing themselves shooting free throws at the same capacity, the same amount of time as the physical group. Month later, as I said, they retested the percentages, and they found that the physical group, the ones that were actually in the gym shooting, had a 24% increase in their percentage. Pretty significant, obviously. You're shooting.
Those, yeah.
They found, can you guess what the visualization group is? Like, how much percentage do you think they increased if the physical group was 24?
I should probably know, but I don't recall.
If you had to give like a guess, what would you say?
Yeah, not actually practicing the skill, I would guess like 15% better.
So it was 23% better. So 24 to 23. In statistics, I think we call that a marginal difference, not a significant difference.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Which means it doesn't mean shit. But really it goes to show that like those who are able to effectively visualize, they provided a mental blueprint for themselves for the actions where it was just as good. And we know from like actually studying this that there are mirror neurons, there's actual activity in the parts of the nervous system that are involved in these physical movements required to execute the skill. Those all light up in order in the same sequence of the person actually executing the skill. So remarkable evidence to suggest that it is not all hype.
Yeah, so what it sounds like to me, visualization is basically daydreaming on purpose. You do it all the time, but when do you use it intentionally? And if you can daydream on purpose about the things that you need to do in those high pressure moments, you can get better at those things without actually doing them physically. And this is not just a thought experiment. This is something that influences the same part of your brain that is activated when you do the physical activity. We've heard this before. Your mind does not know the difference between you physically performing the task and you visualizing the task. And that's why visualization is one of the key pieces of the Northstar method, because you can get better without actually doing the task. So obviously in this experiment, we were comparing physical practice to visualization, and we saw that the improvement was pretty much the same. Imagine what happens when you combine those. We have heard a lot of the best athletes in the world talk about visualization. One of the most famous cases is Michael Phelps, who used to visualize what would go potentially wrong in his competitions, and then famously had one of his visualizations occur during the Olympics. He would always sit down and visualize before his meets that maybe his cap comes off, maybe he gets an injury, or maybe his goggles get filled up with water and he can't actually see where he's going. In the Olympics, this exact scenario happened to him. Regardless, if I recall correctly, he still won gold, and afterwards attributed that to having visualized and anticipated that mistake beforehand.
That's such a good example. And I have an example of one of our clients. She's a female MMA fighter, about 18 years old. And she got knocked out during a fight and then continued the fight and won. And so if you're familiar with MMA at all, you know this can happen. You can get knocked and you black out essentially. Like you can physically still move. You're kind of just on autopilot. And that's what happened with her. And we actually, I guess not ironically, but this makes a lot of sense. We did a lot of visualization. Like that was probably the main focus of our practice. And she said she attributed it to that. I'm not saying that. She said it. And I also believe it. But she thinks that like she went through the fight so much, she shadow boxed, she saw everything that she could do, and she ended up actually winning that fight. So it just goes to show like when things can go wrong. And if you play sports, I'm sure you've made a mistake or been in a situation where you don't want to be in. Do you want to shell up and shy away from that, or do you want to be mentally prepared for when that happens and have the ideal response? And I would assume for most people it's the latter.
You've probably heard a coach talk about playing fast. Usually in football, you hear about it on like Thursday night football games. So when there's a short week for football players, they won't install a full game plan like they would when the game is on Sunday. And the reason for that is there's only so much information that they can download before the game starts. The issue with not having fully committed the plays to memory is that when you do them under pressure, you have to think about it. And the time that it takes to think about what should I do is the time for the opponent to beat you to where you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
So usually coaches are using practice to help players download or sort of like subconsciously understand what they need to do so that they don't have to think about it when it comes to the game. Visualization helps you do that ahead of time. So if you use visualization and everybody else on your team isn't, you're going to be able to download the plays before everybody else. You're going to be able to play faster than everybody else because you're going to have to think less and be able to do more. The last thing that we want to do in a high pressure situation is think.
Yeah.
We want to be able to just react. And for most people, their reaction is panic. When you visualize, you turn your reaction into an intentional response. So you have a sort of downloaded movement that you're going to do before you even think about it.
The mental blueprint. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. That's so funny. You said intentional response is literally my exact words.
Yeah. Although we have a ton more questions to answer, and I'm sure you'll send us some too, we're going to wrap it up right there because we went really in depth on why we're doing this and what it looks like today. We appreciate you joining, listening, and being a part of the community. Like we said before, if you want to get involved in this community, you can do so by following at Northstar Method, emailing your questions or DMing them, go at northstarmethod.com.
Yeah, our DMs are open. However you want to get a hold of us, get a hold of us.
That being said, going forward, we're going to crank these podcasts out weekly. We hope that if you want to think, feel, and do your best, that you'll tune in with us too. Thanks again for listening to the inaugural episode of the Northstar Method podcast, and we'll see you next time.
All right.